Hello, this is Gordon.
Hey, Gordon, it's Brad Lindsay. How you doing, sir?
Hello, Brad. I'm good. How are you today?
I'm doing pretty well. I just wanted to catch up with how things are going in the Boaz front. First of all, how's everybody doing? How's everybody's spirits holding up in the Boaz camp?
Well, it's been interesting. We've had a few change-ups in the personnel during the crazy time for a lot of different reasons. Yeah, there's just the three of us now. We've had a few changes in personnel. It got a little crazy in there for a while, and we had people walking out, and other people that didn't work out so well for us. And so we're back to just the three basic partners where we started. Boaz is working hard on working out how to actually produce the instruments once they're manufactured, basically putting it all together. And and then we have we had a problem with the files that we have been using in our CAD program. Apparently, they had been saved over the years in various different formats, and so they all had to be updated to the latest version, which is not particularly difficult, but you have to be very careful doing that. So that is actually where we're at this point, and hopefully, if what I'm told is true, we should have that ready by the end of the week, round about there, and we'll be ready to start taking bids on the molds. And once we have the bids on the molds, we will start to produce, hopefully in the next month or so.
So I think
it's moving along.
I think in my conversations with Boaz before and Morris, when he was on with you guys, I think we were talking about Boaz wanted to produce it in, was it Israel or the U.S.?
Yeah, we've gone through a couple of different options. There was a company in Minnesota that could produce them for us, who would produce everything. They were a little expensive, but we really thought we were going to go in that direction for a while. And then Boaz met somebody in Israel who was very involved in the plastics business in China, and he pretty much told us we'd be crazy to do that. Also, at the beginning, because we're woodworkers. We've worked in wood our entire careers, Boaz, myself. So this whole plastic thing is completely new to us. And again, we try not to say plastic when we produce the guitar. We're talking about, because it's a very high-end, specialized form of plastic.
Sure.
Now, a lot of people think when you say plastic, they think plastic bottles and stuff like that. This is not that, but it is basically plastic technology. So we were looking at molds, and we started asking questions, and we were quoted a very high price for the molds, but we always thought it would be that way. And then this gentleman suggested that we just go with prototype molds, or it's a particular kind, and he said there is what they call an infinity mold, where you can get like 200,000 impressions out of it. Mm-hmm. Or you can get what's known as a prototype mold, where you're lucky if you get 20,000 impressions. And honestly, we don't need 20,000 impressions. If we sell 20,000 Boaz ones, then we'll certainly have enough money to go for the infinity mold, so it won't be a problem.
Right.
So we switched all that out, and we also slowed down a bit so that we could learn the technology, since it's all completely new to us. So we've been going through that, and we met this gentleman, Boaz met this gentleman in Israel, who's being very helpful to us. So at this point, the intention is to have the molds created in China, and they will make, I think we end up with 20 guitars. 20 impressions of everything, and we put them together and make sure they're good. And once we've done that, then we can go into full production.
Right. So these are going to be assembled by Boaz and a small team, I presume. So
right now, the intention is for them to be assembled by Boaz in his workshop in Israel.
Okay.
Because
he's going
he
to have
wants to stand over everything. I mean,
Right.
we don't know. There are, I don't know if you've ever been involved in manufacturing, but I've done it my entire career, and there's absolutely nothing that can possibly go wrong. You've checked everything, and then the first day you go into production, it's a complete disaster.
Yeah.
So we're assuming it's going to be a complete disaster. So he needs to be there to solve the problems.
Absolutely.
And so once that gets up and running, the main thing at first is we're gonna produce the molds that produce the basic guitar. The part that has the strings on it. And once we get that down, everything else is just like Lego. It just clips on.
Right.
So that's really the most important part. And once we have that down and we have a production process in place, we can do that. And we had, I don't know, have you seen pictures of the final prototype that we put up recently?
I did see one picture, yes.
Yeah.
I couldn't see it real clearly, but it was just the one front of the guitar.
Yeah, it's pretty much. We did finish it. Basically, what happened was we decided there were certain things that we felt needed to be improved on, and so we opted to have another one printed. So we had a 3D printer print up the guitar, which is very expensive, and which gave us the final prototype. And Boaz spent a fair amount of time just looking at the parts once he got it, just to make sure how he was going to do it and how it was going to go together. And there's a process that involves epoxy as far as the putting the neck together and stuff, which he was quite worried about. And so finally one day he called me up and he said, I'm going ahead, I'm going to do it. And he called me back in about an hour and said, it all went together perfectly. It's not a problem. In fact, he said it took him 15 minutes to put it all together, which is about what we had budgeted for. So it's going good.
Yeah, that's great.
I hate to say that. I'm knocking vigorously on wood.
So, the main reason I wanted to reach out was because, like I said, I'm a member of a couple of the Facebook forums, and it seemed like a couple of the natives were getting restless and they were wanting more updates than they thought they were getting or whatever. But, I mean, I thought it was fine, to be honest. I paid for my, Boaz offered to give me one of these guitars, and I told him absolutely not. I said, look, you're putting your heart and soul into this. I'm going to buy my guitar. So I actually ponied up for the top of the line. I bought everything, and I'm not worried about it in the least. I know it's going to take some time, and you guys said something about the middle of the year, even months ago. So I'm not.
We're aiming for May, June. I can pretty much guarantee you that you're not going to see it May, June.
Right.
But it should not be that far. If it goes out into September, I'll be surprised. But at this point, I really have nothing to base that on. We don't have a manufacturer, and we don't. So I probably shouldn't be saying things like that. But that's the way I'm feeling at this point.
Yeah.
So, as far as the guys online go, I'll tell you what's been going on. We actually had a couple of people that worked for us. We had Ehud, who worked for us for a while, and Morris, who worked for us, and they both set up Facebook accounts. Ehud did the technical one, and Morris did the just the basic Boaz one, and they are actually in charge of those. We don't have any control over them, and they're no longer with us.
Right.
So what I'm intending to do, and I was hoping to get this up today or tomorrow, is to get everybody consolidated onto one site, and that way we won't miss these messages, because I wasn't getting any update whatsoever on, I literally had to go back and look at every single message to make sure that we weren't missing any, and of course I missed a couple of them. And also it was partly my fault, because I did promise everybody I'd be doing a weekly update. And what generally happens is I get to the end of the week and I call Boaz, and Boaz says, hold off for a couple of days, I have a big announcement to make. And then we hold off for a couple of days, and then he goes, no, it's a little premature for that. and then I decide on something, and then Boaz goes, no, hold off a little bit longer. So anyway, so I'm going to improve on that a little bit. I'm actually not going to promise that we'll be doing it once a week, because that really is a little too much, but we will be updating a lot more. Plus, we're actually going to have a lot more information to update about at this point.
Well, let me ask you this. I haven't. I'll be honest with you. I haven't hung on. I haven't hung on your every word on the updates so far. I've checked in here and there, but I haven't really delved into what all the prototype changes have been or anything. Can you give me a kind of a running total, like since the Kickstarter ended and this date, what some of the changes have been to the final design?
Yeah, well, we ended up raising over 400,000, which was just outrageous. We had no idea that we would do that well. A lot of it is due to you. I'll definitely give you kudos on that one, because a lot of people remarked that they had heard you mention it on your podcast, which is very cool. But there were a few things that we were never happy with the neck. Do you remember when you played it? The neck was kind of chunky.
Yeah, well, it was kind of a D shape, sort of. I thought, it wasn't. Yeah, it was a little. It would have taken slightly getting used to. So yeah, I do remember.
Yeah. So we went down. I took Boaz down to Nashville, and one of my dear friends, Mark Lacey, down there is probably the best. I think the best archtop maker in the world at this point. His guitars are incredible, but he worked for Gibson. He ran George Gruhn's repair shop for 15 years or so, and I don't know anybody that's more knowledgeable about guitars. He worked for Gibson for a long time. He worked for Guild. So he has this so I took him down, and I said, what do we need to do about this neck? And he said, we can come up with a neck that that almost nobody will be happy with, but everybody will be reasonably happy with. And so we did. Okay. And so that was the major change. It was the neck. And
so what kind of shape are you talking? Are you talking more like a Fender C shape or what?
Yeah, it's a little bit. It's sort of between a Fender and a PRS kind of a thing.
Okay.
And a PRS is again halfway between a Gibson and a Fender. So it's sort of, I'd say it's more closer to what you get on a PRS guitar.
Okay.
To be honest, it's the great thing about it is it's permanent. Every guitar is going to be exactly the same as every other guitar. It's a true cliche product because it comes out of a mold, which means that you can. Boaz has built in this ridiculously low action on it, and and the frets all come out of the mold perfect, and so it's just so incredibly easy to play. I'm sure you noticed that even with the chunky neck that was on there before.
Oh yeah, it had great action. The one that we had there.
Yeah, but it's amazing because when people play it, there's this wonderful moment, and I think I can probably see it in almost every single person we've had play the guitar. They handle it and they look at it and go, oh, that's cool, a plastic guitar, and you see this look of, oh dear, I better be polite. and they say, okay, and then you show them how you can flip out the cassette, and they go, oh, that's really cool, yeah, I like that. And then they plug the guitar in and they talk about something while they're doing it, and then they start to play. Then they stop for a second, and then they start to really play, and then they run arpeggios, they run chords, they start, doing whatever they do best. And then there's a moment where they just stop and they look up. And I always say to them at that point, you can see it in a lot of the videos, I go, it's not a toy. And they go, oh my God, no, it's not a toy. And then they go back, and you can't drag them away from the guitar for about an hour after that. It's it's extraordinary. And until you've played the guitar, you just don't understand.
Right. Well, I will say the one thing that sold me in particular on the guitar, and I think probably a lot of my audience too, because I were sold on it as well, was just the sheer amount of thought and patience and genius that was put into it in the design stages up to that point that Boaz had. And you could just see the love in the creation. You could see Boaz's genius kind of all over it, sort of his fingerprints. And and once I realized who I was talking to, who I was sitting next to here, that he had worked with Dr. Kasha and people like that, I was just like blown away that I hadn't known of him before, or that it didn't occur to me, who he was. I knew who he was, but it didn't occur to me until, about halfway through that interview, I was like, you're that dude. You know what I mean? So that was it was one of those moments of just realization. I felt just so stupid, because I'm supposed to know what I'm talking about, but at that moment it was just like I had no idea who really I was sitting next to, and then it finally occurred to me. But I think that's what was so, a lot of people were sold on. So one thing I did want to ask you about, though, now that I'm thinking about it, Morris was here as well, and he and Boaz seemed like they had a pretty good, almost brotherly rapport. Morris, he was a good guy. We went out to eat and stuff after that, and I didn't know. I was kind of curious what happened with Morris and what happened with the other fellow you mentioned, and why things didn't work out. Or is there anything you could talk about particularly? Or
Morris. There was. How can I put this with Morris? Things got more and more hectic during the whole raising of the money. And Morris just reached a point where he told us, he said he was quitting. He couldn't do it anymore. And he was pretty adamant. And he just quit and left. He still has a piece of it, I believe. So he will be involved from that standpoint. I just don't think he was really up to it. He was, Morris was just basically a guitar player. He'd never been in the business itself. Mm-hmm. So for him, it was an uphill climb all the time. And I think he just decided it wasn't really what he wanted to do. Right. And which was a little disappointing. And, we wish him well. And, in any organization, these things happen. And where do you go? Now, Ehud was actually in Israel. If you have a startup company, the government actually offers programs where they will give you people who are experts in various things, and basically the government pays them part of their salary, and you pay them the other part. So we had Ehud come on just for a short period of time as part of that program. But once that was over, there was really not much point in continuing. So we parted there, and that was always on the books. That was something that wasn't going to move forward. So.
Kind of like a business incubator system.
Yeah, exactly. So that's why Ehud was there. And again, Ehud was not somebody who had any real knowledge about the guitar world. It used to bother me a little bit because he would answer questions about things to do with guitars, and it was plainly obvious to anybody who was a guitar player that this person didn't know what they were talking about. But he was very he was enthusiastic, incredibly enthusiastic, and we definitely appreciated his enthusiasm.
Was he a plastics guy? Was that Ehud?
No, he wasn't a plastics person. He was more of a business person. He, I don't know. He had an MBA, and he was really what he was there was to give us more business kind of advice and stuff like that.
I see.
And he sort of added to his stuff as it went on. So.
I asked you a bit ago about the specs changes, but we kind of got a bit sidetracked. So that may have been my fault. Sorry.
Yeah, no problem. So one of the things was previously with the bodies, when you had to actually pop the body off to change the cassette. Right. And you do actually no. You had to unplug it. Yeah. You had to unplug it and then change the cassette. Right. it's the unplugging that you don't have to do anymore.
Okay.
So basically, you can take the cassette out now without unplugging it, and you can take the body off and then the cassette out. Now, people really want to be able to keep that thing plugged in, and frankly, I don't understand. I don't see the reason for it, but now you can do it. So that's
okay.
that.
And
also, it was neck diving big time. I don't know if you noticed that, but then it was
Yes.
neck heavy, and so Boaz extended the horn on the top to give it more balance.
Right. That was something
And,
he said he was going to do, right?
Yeah, and it's really interesting. I'll send you a few pictures. Maybe you can put some pictures up too.
Okay.
That he sent me of the final prototype, and it's really interesting. Once the guitar physically came into balance, I think the design really came into balance. Also, there's that thing where, form and it just looks right now. And I haven't actually played the new one. I'm hoping to get it soon over here. But just looking at pictures of it, it really is in balance now. It looks like there was always something in my mind that was not quite right with it, and it looks perfect now. And I think that's what it was. It was just that it was out of balance.
I think I did also notice a post about squeakiness in the body, like because it was kind of the plasticky body, it kind of would squeak a little bit here or there, and that's been solved.
That's been completely solved.
Okay.
Yeah. That doesn't happen anymore. He put in some little rubber cups that hold it in place and stuff. The first video that we had of the guitar and somebody playing it, it was on very low volume, and this guy had, I think Boaz had bought a brand new really cool leather strap for it, and you could hear the squeaking going on. I said, Boaz, it still squeaks. And he goes, no, that's the really expensive leather strap I just put on it.
Right.
And so, yeah. And then, of course, when we posted that piece, there were a lot of people freaking out, saying it's still there. But it is that squeaking is just the leather. There is no squeaking.
Yeah. Well, I mean, this is, to me, this was always going to be something that was going to be highly unique. And for me, it's not, I don't foresee it necessarily being my number one guitar or anything. I mean, for me, I was buying it because I was buying into the genius of Boaz and the fact that, it represented a leap forward or leap sideways laterally, kind of in the guitar design world. And as somebody who appreciates things that are different, I was kind of going for it for that reason. But I can definitely see where a lot of people would use this as their number one guitar and want to get 3 or 4 of the cartridges and kind of keep those with it. How many cartridges now, a standard, have you issued?
I think we have the basic 3, which is the Strat, the Tele, and the humbuckers. And we're also adding a P90 version. So that will be 4 at this point.
Okay.
I talked with Don Lace at the NAMM show, and we're going to be the first module we'll come out with after is going to be a Lace. I'm not sure what Don was thinking about what he wanted to do, and he had 3 or 4 ideas on how that would work. And then after that, I could see us personally. I would like to see a Rickenbacker module, possibly a jazz module. Just with one of Kent Armstrong's jazz pickups up there in the neck position. And then Kent was talking about something that would involve all kinds of, basically top of the line, heavy metal, everything pickups, so that you could, coil tap and do all kinds of stuff on it. Like
some DiMarzios or something like that?
Something like that. Well, Kent is going to be making most of the pickups.
Oh, Kent, you mean Kent Armstrong, right?
Kent Armstrong,
Oh,
yeah.
Okay.
So there's that. Kent also, when Brian May finally decided he needed to have a second guitar, he had Kent Armstrong wind the pickups for him, and they went through a long period to get the pickups to the point where they actually sounded like Brian's guitar, because it's very important, obviously, to get that down. So I'm thinking a Brian May version would be pretty good.
That would be pretty awesome, yeah.
Yeah, there's sort of things that, I mean, most guitar players would look at that, at the Brian May and say, oh my God, I'd really like to own that guitar. But honestly, you're talking, what, $2,500, $3,000? Mm-hmm. So it's never going to happen unless you're the world's biggest Brian May fan. But for $350, maybe $400, you could buy the module, which would do all of that. Why not? I mean, it's like getting a brand new guitar for $300 or $400.
Sure.
And the price point on most of the modules will be between $250 and $350, and we're hoping to put at least one out a month. So it'll be a little bit like getting a brand new guitar every month for between $250 and $350, which is pretty cool.
So are you guys planning on stockpiling some of the modules and then selling those, or are you going to have them made as they're ordered?
Oh, no. We're going to stockpile them. We're going to have basically a website which will be, those websites where you can go on and look at cars, and you can pick the color, and you can pick the, whatever you want to have on it, Sirius
Sure.
Radio or whatever. It's going to be very much like that. It's basically, they call them bespoke websites after tailors. A tailor, when you go in and you have your suit made to order, it's called a bespoke suit, basically, because it's made to you. So we're going to have a bespoke site where you would go on and you'd get the basic guitar, and then you would be able to choose the modules that you want to put on it. And then at any time you can go on there and, buy a new module, see what's going on. And we have 2 or 3 things coming down the line, which I'm not sure if Boaz talked to you about them. If he did, he probably told you not to talk about it. But we do have some stuff. So that will be, within about 6 months to a year, we'll have a bunch of interesting new things going up on there. And we intend to make it a closed community, being that you aren't going to be able to generally buy this in the stores, which means we'll be able to keep the prices down. So we aren't having to put in dealer net pricing and then have it double up and become very expensive. So it'll be basically what we'll be offering everybody that buys the guitar. Every month they can go online and they'll probably get an email in the mail and say, did you always want to own a Rickenbacker? Well, here you go. Here's the equivalent of a Rickenbacker module, which will give you something close to the sound of a Rickenbacker.
Are you planning on warehousing and shipping from the U.S.?
At this point, we're gonna open a warehouse here in Maryland, where I live.
Okay.
And we're going to ship everything pretty much from here to start with. But if things go well, based on the amount of orders we had in Europe, we're probably going to have to open. When I say probably, we're certainly going to have to open a place in Europe somewhere. And we're already in discussions with this wonderful friend of mine, Alex Abravanel, who is at the music office in Greece. And he has 30 years in the business and has been a huge proponent of this idea right from the start. So he'll probably be doing that. We have a distributor in Japan who's very interested. And then, of course, I think we probably need to do Australia and South America. And then we might retire.
Yeah, there's no point in paying the duties twice, because you're going to get hit with duties, twice.
Yeah, exactly. And it's getting a little interesting. We're probably going to have a separate UK distributor.
Yeah,
because
I was going to ask.
What's been going on in Brexit. But let's not get into that.
Yeah. Are you sure you don't want to?
No. Honestly, we had been looking at a facility in the south of England that could have produced this for us. Uh-huh. And then as soon as Brexit happened, we realized that it's just too complicated. There's just too much unknown things
It's not
going
settled
on,
yet.
and they basically lost that opportunity simply. And I'm obviously from England originally, and I was looking forward to being able to zip back and forwards to take care of the production, but so we'll just have to do it in China, where of course there is a pandemic going on at the moment.
So that makes it a lot more simple.
Shakespeare said, "Many a slip twixt cup and mouth," and that's the point we're at right now.
Yeah.
So.
Well, listen, Gordon, I appreciate your time. I don't want to keep you all night. At least I just wanted to offer this as a nugget for the people from my channel, and I know there are many, there are scores, who, have purchased one of these during the Kickstarter campaign and, probably would appreciate an update. And, so that this will give them somewhat of an update.
Yeah, I totally appreciate it. And really, honestly, you were the catalyst that got the thing really happening. So we are forever in your debt. And we also made a decision a long time ago that none of the original backers will ever pay full price. So if you're a backer and you've bought into it now, you'll be reaping the benefits for the next however many years we're around. So.
Well, that's great to hear. I really appreciate it. Boaz did actually promise me a free extra module, so I'm going to hold him to that.
Don't worry. Don't worry. You've got my phone number. Just cool.
I appreciate it, Gordon. Thank you for your time, buddy.
Okay, no problem. And I'm going to go back to my new toy. I just bought myself a pedal steel guitar.
No way.
It's amazing.
Did you watch my show? I guess you watched my show last week.
No, I didn't. Did you do pedal steels?
I just talked about pedal steels last week. I was like, why? There was an NPR news article that I kind of read on my show last week and was talking about pedal steels, and was like, I would like to get one and learn because it would be a new challenge. And then I started talking about kind of how different they are. I mean, from guitar. So.
Yeah, it's not. But if you've ever played any slide. It's once you understand what the pedals are doing, it all just falls into place. I mean, I've had mine for about 5 days now, and I'm having a blast. I mean, wow. I'm sitting in my studio with playing, just have stuff in the background playing and just playing along with it. It's just amazing. I recommend anybody should go in and do it. And even if you're playing, there's a huge opportunity for serious metal players. It's never been used in that genre.
I agree, and that's one of the things that I kind of touched upon last week too, because somebody said something like, I can't wait for the New Testament album to come out with pedal steel on it. I was like, yeah, that would be killer.
Yeah, and honestly, you could put as many pedals on this as you want, and you get unlimited sustain on it.
Yeah.
It almost sustains as well as a Boaz.
Yeah, and that was going to be my next question. When's Boaz going to give all this up and just go into the pedal steel manufacturing?
Well, the cool thing is we discovered this by accident, but if you take the bodies off, you have a perfectly excellent lap steel. And the Boaz has been working on a vibrato, and he sent me an email with a little video of this vibrato that basically you could put on any one of the strings, and you could adjust it so that it would adjust the string up and down as far as you wanted it to go. And he said, "This is brilliant." He said, "I've never thought of this before, but this might be my genius invention." And I said, no, Boaz, that's called a B-bender. It's been out since the early 60s.
Yeah, exactly.
Clarence White was playing it in The Byrds.
Yeah.
and he totally invented the B-bender again.
Yeah. I couldn't tell you the number of times I've done the same thing. I've been laying in bed, as I'll have this genius idea, and then I'll look it up the next day and I'm like, crap, somebody already beat me to it 30 years ago.
Yeah. But this with that on it, actually that would give you basically two pedals. The equivalent of two pedals, and if you laid it down on your lap and played it with a steel, you'd be pretty close to a pedal steel sound. Yeah. I mean, it would be entirely limited, but you could still get some of those bends on it.
If Boaz were able though to sort of re-engineer the B-bender in kind of his own design and incorporate that somehow, and you could probably get around. I'm not even sure if the B-bender is still under patent. I mean, I think that's been long enough. It's You don't even have to get a
it's
license for one anymore, do you?
I don't think so. Who was it? Joe. Who's the great guy in Nashville? Oh, crumbs. He's a great friend of mine. Who did the original with Clarence White?
Is it
I know
it's not Joe Glass.
Joe Glazer. Joe
Glazer, yeah.
Joe will hear this and yell at me.
Yeah.
Joe. Joe. I think Joe did Clarence White's original, or took what Clarence was doing and developed it from that point. I know he still installs them if you want to, but it involves routing out half your Telecaster.
Right.
And if you really want to do that, I've always wanted to do it, but I've never had the guts to do it. But this you literally just hook it on, and Boaz says it will work, and generally when Boaz says it'll work, it almost always does.
Yeah, I don't doubt it.
Yeah, he's pretty amazing. He's quite. Do you have a couple of minutes? I'll tell you how I met Boaz.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely.
I was at the Long Island Guitar Show in 2000 and probably about 2003, 2004, and I worked for Eastman. And we had just developed, I actually developed the first line of archtop guitars for Eastman. And the Long Island Guitar Show was a big archtop show. And Boaz had actually decided he wanted to improve the archtop guitar. So he built several archtops and brought them over to that show to show them off there. So on the first day we were there, it was a Friday, and I was there was a hotel that's that was part of the convention center, and I was standing in the lobby late in the afternoon, and there was this gentleman walking up and down, and he was becoming more and more agitated, and every time he walked by me he looked even more agitated. So finally I looked at him and I said, "Is everything okay?" And he turned around and he said, "This is really silly." He said, "I'm an observant Jew, and it's Friday, and someone promised me they would drive me back to my hotel before the sun went down." He said, "And I'm not that much of an observant Jew. I mean, it really doesn't matter." And he started, and I said, Stop. I said, "I have a car outside. I'll drive you over there. How far is it?" And he goes, "Oh, it's only 5 minutes." So I popped him in the car, and I drove him over, and we got there in plenty of time. And we went into the bar, and he said, "Let me buy you a beer." And I said, "Sure." So we sat down, and then he leaned across the table and said, "By the way, my name's Boaz Elkayam." And of course, I knew who Boaz Elkayam was, and I just about fell out of my chair. "You're Boaz Elkayam," because he was, he basically reinvented the classical guitar.
Right.
And most of the really great, particularly in Europe, the European classical guitar players won't walk out on stage without a Boaz guitar anymore. And so we became friends over that week at that show, and we would bump into each other once in a while. And then one day I get a call from him out of nowhere, and he said, "Whereabouts in America are you?" And I said, "Oh, I'm in Maryland." He goes, "Oh, so am I." He said, "Do you know where Montgomery Village is?" And I said, "I'm about 5 minutes from Montgomery Village." He goes, "Oh, good, we'll have lunch." Okay. So I drove over to this restaurant, and Boaz was there with Kurt Roederer, who is probably in Europe the biggest classical guitar player. And so it turns out that Kurt had just finished doing the Goldberg variations on guitar, which is ridiculous.
Right.
And he
that's my favorite. That's my favorite piece of music, by the way.
Oh, have you heard Kurt's version of it?
I think I have, actually. I think I stumbled across it one day. If it's the same guy I'm thinking of, then yes.
He's the only person that's ever done it.
Okay,
and he
then
probably is the only person who ever will.
Then I've seen it.
Yeah. So it turns out that he decided that he was going to do the Well-Tempered Clavier, the other Bach piece that everybody loves.
Yeah.
And to do that, not to get too, well, I guess this is a nerdy forum. So so it's all about the particular mode that it's playing in, and back in the day they would retune the harpsichord so everything would ring perfectly,
right, in
the particular key and whatever it was being played in. So, and to do that, Kurt wanted Boaz to build him several guitars with the frets slightly different places. And Boaz is sort of famous for bending the frets, so the intonation is always perfect on his guitars. He calls them Boaz frets.
Uh-huh.
So Kurt said, and Kurt was playing Boaz guitars at that point, and so they were having lunch at this place in Maryland to discuss that. And of course, I'm sitting there, the world's biggest guitar nerd, with the world's greatest classical guitar player and the world's greatest classical guitar builder having a discussion about stuff. So I was in heaven.
Oh yeah.
And so they're talking away, and I'm just listening. And then Boaz says, "No, I'm not going to make you a bunch of guitars. That's ridiculous. I have no interest in making the same guitar over and over again," which is typical Boaz, because he just turned down probably $100,000 worth of business. Right there. He says, "I have no interest in doing that." He said, "But I'll tell you what I'll do. Is I will make you one guitar, and I will make it modular so that you can switch out the fingerboard. So I'll give you all the different fingerboards, and you can just put them on." And I thought, wow, that's very good. And he said, "Yeah, and on top of that, I'll make them out of plastic." And at which point my head spun around. I went, "Boaz, you can't possibly put a plastic neck on a high-end classical guitar. That's ridiculous." And he says, "No, Gordon, you just don't understand materials." He said, "Absolutely, the best material out there is this particular form of plastic." Mm-hmm. And he said, "And it works well." And Kurt said, "Oh yeah, I've got it on all my guitars. It's amazing. So much better than ebony." And then Boaz said the magic words, which was, "And I honestly believe if you made an electric guitar out of this material, it would easily be the best sounding electric guitar on the market today." And I said, "Really?" And he said, "Yeah." And he said, "Actually, I've been thinking about doing that." And then he pulled out a napkin and started drawing me the Boaz One guitar on the napkin. And I said, "Well, if you're going to make it, you should make it modular like the old Dan Armstrong guitars," which is Kent Armstrong's dad.
Sure.
Another connection. And so you could pop the pickups in and out, and then you could have this different way of doing it. And he goes, "Oh, that's brilliant. I'll make it modular."
Can I offer you a suggestion, Gordon?
Yeah.
Because you seem like the type that'd be receptive to this sort of thing, because to even understand what that Dan Armstrong guitar is, and you get how cool that is.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Have you ever seen one of those? It was a West Tone, so it would have been made by the Japanese company.
Taisco, right?
No. It would have been made by Matsumoku.
Oh yeah.
So West Tone, they were made by Matsumoku along with like Aria Pro 2s and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. They had this bass guitar. It was called the Rail, and it had the one pickup that you could slide. So you didn't need multiple pickups, because you could just take one pickup that was mounted to two rails that would slide along these rails in any position you wanted. And it had the volume control was built right onto that same module. I'm wondering, and I've wondered this since Boaz brought me that thing, whether that would be possible to put into a module to build a rail guitar where you just have the one pickup and you can slide the pickup in any position you want.
Well, it's really interesting, because Boaz did discuss that with Kent Armstrong one day. And Kent looked at him and said, actually they were on the phone, but Kent said, he said, "Have you ever noticed that a bridge pickup is wired quite differently, is wound quite differently from a neck pickup?"
That's true.
"And if you move the one up and down, you end up with all kinds of problems, and there is a very good reason for that." And he said that that this company had brought them out, but it was either too muddy at one end or too bright at the other end. Mm-hmm. And so it turned out that it was not really usable. So you would have to come up with a compromise pickup, and he said it would not satisfy anybody.
Interesting.
So yeah, we talked about that for quite a bit, because it seemed like a pretty good idea. I mean, with what we're doing, it seemed like a pretty good idea.
Well, let me ask you this then. What if you had a rail guitar with two pickups. One that was made essentially, for the neck-ish positions, and one that was made for the bridge-ish positions. Then you could basically slide it into any middle position you wanted and get any combination. Do you see what I'm saying?
It would be an interesting thing to try. See, this is what's so great about the Boaz, because if you wanted to do that on a decent guitar, you'd have to basically gut the guitar and destroy it.
Right.
Whereas with the Boaz, all you have to do is get a blank module and figure out how to put the bars in. And
right.
then
And I'm actually one step ahead of you. I think I'm going to have Boaz see if he can send me a blank module, and if you guys didn't want to experiment with that, then I may. So
yeah. I mean, honestly, yeah, definitely. There are so many possibilities on the module thing.
Yeah.
That it's going to keep us busy for a long time.
Yeah, I walk around NAMM or something, and I'm just really drawn to all the weirdos. I'm drawn to the people who are doing, like there's this one guy at NAMM who was at Summer NAMM who, he puts amplifiers in old radios, and I stopped there for a long time and chatted with him. And there's, the guys at the Italian guitar. I forget the name of the designers, but
Marconi. Are you thinking of Marconi?
No,
you're thinking of the ones that had the turntable where you could spin around the pickups. Was that the one?
No, but those are cool. Doesn't Lindsey Buckingham uses one of those, right? The one with the turntable on the pickup, yeah.
Do you know how much they cost?
Oh, a lot, yeah. They're like $4,000 or something, aren't they?
No, they're closer to $8,000.
Oh, okay. Well, yeah. But I knew they were high.
They came by the booth and they sat and messed with the Boaz. And as they were switching out the pickups, and they kept saying, "How much is this going to cost?" And we were telling them, and they looked a little disappointed. Although I have to say, I have played those guitars; they are spectacular.
Yeah, I bet.
But I could never afford one now.
Yeah, that's the other cool modification that I was thinking of. As I was telling you about the rail guitar, I was actually. It's funny how great minds think. We think alike. Because I was also thinking about those.
Shakespeare again says, "Fools seldom differ."
Yeah. Speak for yourself.
Yeah, right.
I said that.
Gotcha.
No, I'm kidding.
No, I know.
But no, seriously, this is. I mean, we could probably go on all night, Gordon. But yeah, man, this is. It's very stimulating stuff. I mean, the guitar is, 300-400 years old, something like that. But it's only really been kind of refined in the past 100 years ish. So.
Yeah. No. I mean, I've spent a lot of time in the violin world. I still have a business that deals mostly with the violin business. And the violin is a mature instrument. It's really, there's almost nothing that can ever happen to it now.
At least not without backlash.
Yeah, right. The guitar, it's out there. It's open.
I'll tell you what,
what's so great.
Yeah, the thing that really got my mind spinning about guitar issues was, I got one of those Gibson Mark Series acoustics from the 1970s that were developed by Kasia and Richard Schneider.
Right. Yeah.
So I had one of those, the top of the line one. It was the MK81, and those are so rare. I think they only made like 400 of the things.
I think so, yeah.
And I had one that belonged to one of the dealer reps. So this is one of the guys who would put it in his car and drive around with the dealers, And and I guess I think maybe they gave him the option to buy those or something, so he held on to his dealer example, and I ended up with it, and it was just and the thing was, those were never highly considered, It seemed like they weren't really very critically acclaimed, put it that way. But I could see what they were going for. I could see it was something different, and it definitely sounded different. And just to, when Boaz, sat across from me, and I kind of made the connection, it's like, he's one of the proteges of that movement, And then not only was he a protege, but he took it even further and started developing side holes and things like that. I was like, okay, this is a special guy, and he deserves my respect and attention,
Yeah, I mean, he was the first person to move the sound hole pretty much up to the to where we see it a lot now. And actually, a lot of his guitars now don't even have sound holes on them. It's pretty amazing.
Right.
I mean, they have the top holes. But and that whole Gibson thing, we if you've been in the business as long as I have, everybody knows that Gibson is one of those places where things go to die sometimes.
Right.
And I think that the whole idea. I mean, for something like that project, it should have had a lot more attention to detail, and it reached a point where it was getting to cost too much, and they just basically shut it down and said, okay, the guitar is the guitar, and that's it. Right. So it was not really that great. I know, again, talking to George Gruen this summer, I mentioned about Dr. Kasher and those guitars, and George said, God, they were horrible guitars. Well, they weren't horrible.
Yeah, I disagree.
But George, well, you know how George is.
I'll tell you what, though. I mean, when you get one of them, and like I said, I had the top of the line one. It was like the 81 or whatever. And I've also had the 53 and also the 35, I think it was the other lower model one. So I've had several of them, all the way up to the top of line one. The top of the line one, it was really actually very well built. I think they paid a lot more attention to it.
And probably if the guy was carrying it around, it was probably one of the original ones that they put together.
I know. Yep.
So it was probably way better than the production model anyway. So it's always the production model that's not great, which is not going to happen with the Boaz. But
right. Well, I mean, and this is the thing too. I understand when you put something into production. Not everything is going to go according to plan. Not everything is going to go according to your kind of ultimate desires of what you wanted it to be. And I get that. Like it's the same kind of also with art. It's like sometimes we aim so high with what we want to record or what we want to write, and we sometimes feel like we fell short. But it ends up being something different, and it ends up being its own thing. So I mean, I have no illusions that you're not going to be racked with problems and issues, and it is what it is. It's you're under. Right. You're going where no man has gone before, essentially.
I mean, Les Paul never envisioned Jimmy Page playing his guitar.
Right.
Ever. I mean, that was not what it was designed for at all.
Exactly.
Yeah, so you just never know where it's going to go. And, I think the guitar world's ready for a rebirth. It's time. It's been a while since we've had something interesting. So.
Yeah, and I think that's one thing I could say about the Norlin era of Gibson. Like everybody bashes on the Norlin era, but they were trying different things. It's like I always look at that era for Gibson, and I'm thinking, at least they were trying different things. I can't bash them too hard because they were, they were trying to extend the instrument a little bit, and come up with new models and try to invent. I mean, if you look at their lineup now, it looks the same as it did in the early 60s, essentially. Yeah.
Exactly.
So it's they haven't really innovated, and they haven't even brought back some of those cool, like a few of the Norlin era models that probably could be reissued if they wanted to. They haven't even tried to reissue some of those things. So it's, I don't know.
I think that the new management at Gibson is, I'm just so excited that finally somebody, because, a lot of people hate on Gibson these days, and, Henry was not my favorite person. I've been sued by him, as is everybody in the business, and for absolutely no reason at all.
What did he sue you for?
Well, he never actually sued us. He threatened to. With Eastman, he said that we were stealing the Epiphone headstock, and there's a lot of similarity. And but it's just a mustache headstock. A million other people had used it also.
Right.
And it was more actually. Bob Benedetto would have been more. Could have been, who was a great friend of the Eastman project, surprisingly enough, being an archtop maker. But they came at us and said that we were stealing that and we were ripping off Epiphone and all kinds of stuff. But it was just they literally went around the NAMM show with a team of lawyers and wrote letters to people and threatened them. And that was just the way Henry did business.
What year was this?
This was, like 2005, 2006.
Okay. So this was like the PRS kind of...
It was around that time because I was with Bill Lawrence, and Bill Lawrence and I had dinner with Paul Reed Smith because Paul wanted Bill to testify, which he did finally in court for him. And it was another one of those dinners that I just happened to fall into place. I don't know how I get to these places, but I did. And at the time, Paul was really, he was really in danger of losing his company.
Yeah.
And it was ridiculous because, it was just plain ridiculous. It was just, it shouldn't have been that way.
No,
There's room enough for everybody.
You know what I kind of always thought about that, the Gibson versus Paul Reed Smith thing was that, and not to, I keep coming back to the Mark Series Gibsons for some reason, but if you'll recall, the headstocks on those Mark Series 70s acoustic Gibsons were almost the Paul Reed Smith headstock to a T. So, bring up pictures of each side by side, and it's like Paul took the headstock from that series, like they had abandoned it, and he was like, "That's good, I'll keep that."
Yeah.
So,
well, the interesting story about Paul is that he basically arrived at just exactly the right moment, because the quality at Gibson at that point was just horrendous, and Fender had just been taken over, and they had shut down the Corona factory, and they were building a new factory, and everything was being made in Japan.
Yeah.
So there were no Fenders out there to speak of, and Gibson just were producing stuff that nobody really wanted. And Paul decided he wanted to make a guitar that was partly Gibson, partly Fender, and also partly his own mojo. And it was just a perfect moment for him to do it. And I think it's brilliant. Of course, he's also a fellow Maryland business, so we're very proud of him in our state here. So, but it was he just turned up at a magic moment, and I'm just so full of admiration for what he did. It's amazing.
And his guitars are, impeccable from the factory.
Have you been to the showcase that they do every year?
No, but I have a friend who is a Paul Reed Smith artist, and I'm thinking if I might ask him if he wants a tag along next time he goes.
Yeah, you should come. I honestly live 30 minutes away from his factory, so if you need a bed, you can sleep on my sofa.
Oh, that's really sweet. I appreciate that.
Come up and hang out. It'll be fun. That's an amazing story. Paul just he did it basically, literally dragged that guitar company into existence.
Right, and it's interesting.
By force of personality.
It's interesting
and ability.
too. It's interesting too because at the time, he was developing, coming up with stuff. It was we're talking about 84, 85-ish, somewhere in there. Yeah. You had Hamer and BC Rich and stuff like that who were doing kind of the high-end stuff too. You know what I mean? Like with the and doing a lot more, boutique neck through stuff, and you could get higher end stuff from them too. So it was like for him to come up in a crowded field and still succeed like that, that's definitely a testament to his ability.
And he's still doing it. I have a friend, Mike Phelan, who plays with the band Marley's Ghost out in San Francisco, and he's one of my dearest friends. And he'd always been a telly guy, and he went between a telly and a 335, I think. And Dean Parks told him about this one particular PRS guitar. Oh, shit, I can't remember what the model is now, but it has all kinds of mods on it so that you can get like half a dozen different things. And he says that there isn't a sound that he cannot get on that guitar. And Dean Parks said the same thing. So I'll find out what that is for you and send it. You might want to look into that guitar. And I played it when I was out in San Francisco last year, and it was extraordinary.
Well, you forget, Gordon, I'm going to have a Boaz.
Oh, that's true. Yeah, you see, this is the thing. We're never going to have enough guitars, even though we're going to get to that point. But it's a wonderful thing. I mean, it's very strange how you can meet perfect strangers like you and I, and people out. You go to a gig. Like last night, I went to a gig and ended up talking for 2 hours with somebody about pedal steel guitars.
Yeah.
And just the guitar universe of people. It's a wonderful thing. It's not a bad way to make a living.
And what's really interesting. I don't know who brought up the subject of the pedal steel guitars, but it wouldn't surprise me a bit if that person had seen my video. and that may have been why he was receptive to the conversation, possibly. It's just funny the way things work, and I know exactly what you're talking about.
Oh
yeah.
And it's a zeitgeist that's out there.
It sure is.
People are suddenly talking about pedal steel guitars out of nowhere.
I know, it's nuts.
Although this has been my plan for the last year and a half, so this is not something that I've wanted one my entire life, and I finally decided it was time.
Yeah, and that's funny. That is so funny because, I mean, literally, man, just, I'd read this article, and, oh gosh, the pedal steel, what was his name? Buddy,
Buddy Emmons.
Not Buddy Emmons.
The
guy who just died.
Riders of the Purple Sage. Buddy.
Yes.
Shoot.
Starts with a C. Cage.
Buddy Cage. There you go.
Yeah. He had just died, and so I was reporting on that in my video, and then it kind of one thing led to another, and I started talking about that article that I had read, and I was, it just reminded me of that. I did have a Showbud pedal steel at one time, and I set it up and everything in my living room, and I tried a few chords and tried to get something out of it that sounded right. And it was just like, man, this is hard.
Well, I'll tell you what. You should set up an interview with. There's a guy that is one of my dearest friends who's also working very closely with Boaz and I. Richie Owens, who is Dolly Parton's pedal steel player for many years.
I've heard of him.
And he has a band called the Farm Bureau, which are amazing. You should all go out and check him out. But he actually worked at Showbud, and when Gibson took over Dobro, he went and worked for Gibson for many years. And so he knows everything there is about pedal steels, Dobros, lap steels. He's actually Dolly Parton's cousin, so he knows that whole story. Some of those stories are amazing, but you'll have to hear them from him.
Wow.
And you should. I'll put you in touch with him. That would make for a great show.
Yeah, definitely.
And also, and he has a guitar collection to die for. So.
Where does he live? In Nashville?
He's in Nashville. Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
He has a studio down there too. He's who was it? What's that? You've noticed I have a problem with names. I always have.
I do
my
too.
Entire life. I cannot remember names.
I just draw a blank.
That song, Keep Your Hands to Yourself.
Don't hand me no lies. You're talking about the hang on.
Yeah, don't think about it. It'll come to you.
Yeah. I know it.
That guitar sound on there is Richie. Richie produced that whole thing.
Okay.
And he's produced records. So he actually worked with the Stones on a couple of things, and he's pretty amazing. You need to talk to him. You'd have a great show.
The Georgia Satellites. There you go.
Georgia Satellites.
Yeah, I knew it. I knew it.
And the Kentucky Headhunters. He did all their records too. Still does, I think.
Do you know what's funny? Do you know what's really funny? The guy who used to be Stevie Ray Vaughan's touring amp tech. He lives here in Louisville, and he's good and he has a studio here too. And he's good friends with Greg Martin from the Kentucky Headhunters, and he just literally, I'm not lying, Gordon, just this last week, he messaged me and he was like, "Hey, I love your channel, love your show. Do you want to come over and hang out this coming week and hang out with Greg Martin?" So isn't it funny how these stories start to interweave?
Ask him about Richie Owens.
Richie, definitely will.
He will light up like a Christmas tree.
Yeah, I bet he will.
Yeah. How amazing! What fun!
Well, listen, Gordon. I could talk to you all night.
Probably should move.
The only thing I have drawn me away is that I've got to actually literally film the rest of my Friday show, and then I've got to edit it all, which takes for freaking ever. So I'll be up half the night as it is. But But yeah, man, this has been absolutely amazing. I've loved talking to you, and tell Boaz when you see him. You know, I don't know if he'll remember me or not, but tell him.
Oh, he
tell
does.
him. Tell him Brad said
definitely.
hi, and you know, I think about him often, and still wish him the very best.
This was fun.
Yeah. Same here.
Thanks. Yeah. So I'll talk to you soon.
Okay, we'll see you, sir. All right, bye-bye.
Bye.
Very cool.